I hope you've enjoyed your curry this evening. I thought that was an inspired choice by Louisa, so thanks, Matthew, for Louisa's contribution there. We are delighted to welcome Chris Hollingshurst back to speak to us after a couple of years. Normally I know what I'm going to say, but all I can really see is that something tells me we're in for an entertaining talk this evening. So I won't say anything more apart from what's been said already. Chris is residentiary canon at Guildford Cathedral, was formerly vicar of West Byfleet Church, and we're very much looking forward to hearing what you've got to say to us. Thanks, Chris.
When I get back to the cathedral, I'm going to tell them that when I got here, I came up and stood at the front and they all started applauding, and they've got something to learn from your example. I wish. Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for your welcome. To my surprise, it's actually been 4.5 years since I was last here. COVID does things to timescales and to people's brains. To this august gathering, eating and speaking, and then on that occasion with my blues partner, Danny Wignall, another vicar, playing some songs as part of the evening. So perhaps I can begin by commenting in this way. You play twice at a venue, once on the way up and once on the way down. It's great to be back. And actually it is great to be back. My theme last time was on the move. I shared some thoughts about how being first a clergy kid and then a vicar meant that I've rarely been in one place for all that long. And I tried to reflect on how all of us then move through life, learning to let go of control of our lives, which is a lifelong challenge, isn't it? And then walking with others in the presence of God. As has just been said, when I was here before, I was vicar of West Byfleet, just next door. The very, very quick, short, no-frills update is that in January 2021, in the pandemic, I moved again to join the clergy team at Guildford Cathedral. I didn't meet most of the congregation for over 6 months, mind. Everything was online. But this evening I'd like to share a little bit about what it means, what is involved in being at Guildford Cathedral, and tell you a bit about the cathedral, because one thing I've discovered is that people don't know as much about the cathedral as we in the cathedral think they might, and perhaps we don't know as much about the parishes as you in the parishes might think that we do, although this old hack of a vicar does have some idea. It is often said that cathedrals are funny places, a bit like secret societies, or at least cut off from the real world. And this evening I hope to demystify that a little bit, and if there's time at the end, although I can't believe it's already getting on for 9 o'clock, that was a great meal, we just all took our time, didn't we? But if there is time at the end, sharing conversation with you about Guildford Cathedral, that's your cathedral, that's our cathedral. Yeah? You're in the Diocese of Guildford, it's your cathedral, it's our cathedral. That's there. And you can blame Charles Gibson for that, because he said in an email, last time you did that, it was quite well appreciated. You could always do it again. Where are you, Charles? Hiding somewhere. Oh, there you are. You're a good man. I'm very fond of Charles. He's always been so lovely to me, particularly when I was down the road. Anyway, therefore, we're going to get a few songs thrown in, and we'll start with a Van Morrison song, Transformation. If you're interested, it's on a CD called Roll with the Punches, which is a lot bluesier than this song, but there we are. just like a river, keeps on wanting to flow, keeps on advancing, advancing with the wisdom that you know. Time has a rhythm, when love is the love is the love. Love is forever, baby, down in your soul. Gonna be a transformation down in your soul. Gonna be a transformation, now that you know. Get used to righteousness, cause it makes you feel whole. Gonna be a transformation down in your soul. La 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 la. Transformation down in your soul. Gonna be a transformation right down in your soul. As always with Van Morrison, the spirituality floats about a little bit, but the message is strong. Okay, so Guildford Cathedral. Well, let's start in an obvious place, just to get the obvious comments out of the way. And yes, that's the outside of the building. It is helpful to remember that it was designed in the Art Deco period, about 30 years before construction began. Something called the Second World War got in the way, which may explain why some people say it reminds them of Surbiton train station. Well, I've heard that. I've also heard largest crematorium chapel in the southeast, which is really unfair, I promise you. Actually, I've come to appreciate the exterior quite a lot, especially if you take the whole structure and not just the front. I mean, how many of you have been there, seen it? Yeah, virtually everybody. Not quite everybody, but most. So that's good. Some of the features and the angles at the east end, which if you're coming up the hill is the far end, are really, really attractive, and I see them every day on my extensive 2.5-minute commute to work from Cathedral Close. The various low-key embellishments to the structure, both inside and outside, tell very different stories. There are places where the building tells you and reminds you about the famous Buy a Brick campaign, which led to the moniker the People's Cathedral. And by the way, the bricks are not all named, and apart from those signed by royalty, we can't actually identify individual bricks, despite the fact that we're asked to do so virtually every day. We're proud to have all the usual commemorative markings of a cathedral, windows and stones, things pointing to county military, police and other public services. But there is a particular story that's implicit in the building, which is that of women and men working together in the design, construction and fitting out of our modern cathedral, and all of its operations ever since. If you look at our website, you can see the early stages of a new online project of mine called Women of Stag Hill, which is already attracting considerable interest and attention, not because it's mine, but because the story of women and men working together is fascinating. Heritage stories are all very well, but in the case of cathedrals, they are, of course, just part of a much bigger story. The story of God and God's people. And the daily worship of God, Father, Son and Spirit, is right at the heart of everything we do. It's our number one priority. And doing this in our particular space is just wonderful. And the wow reaction of visitors walking inside for the first time embraces not just the visual impact, but the spiritual and emotional impact that it has on people, particularly first-time visitors, as I say. Folk are startled by the effect of the building. What the architect called sumptuous simplicity. That's what he was trying to achieve, and I think he did it. I think it's genius, actually. The light and airy worship space speaks to me, at least, of the light and life of God and the spaciousness of the walk of faith. Unlike most cathedrals, we're not dedicated to the Blessed Virgin Mary or the various very famous saints, or occasionally in some cathedrals, not so famous saints. But we're actually the only cathedral in the country dedicated to the Holy Spirit, who prompts and guides the choices we make. The cathedral's regular worship pattern is dignified. It's cathedral style. Some of you will have attended some of it, I'm sure. And it's full of scripture. Every service is dripping with scripture. The music is sometimes quite specialised compared to what I do. But even to this rough old blues fan, the music is uplifting and dripping in excellence. And it opens hearts to the majesty, the beauty and the love of God. I wasn't sure I'd managed to fit in there. But the music has just blessed me beyond measure, and I've learned so much new about classical and choral music I could never have imagined. And even after 3 years, it still feels a huge privilege to be working in the cathedral, and in particular ways at the heart of the diocese. But actually my favourite spaces in the cathedral, I thought about this yesterday, they're the chapels, the little side chapels, and the children's garden at the back on one hand, and then Seasons Cafe on the other hand. Because in both I'm actually likely to run into people wanting to talk about life, problems, difficulties, joys, challenges, and frequently, yes, faith. When people don't know where else to go, in whatever storm they're facing, they frequently come to the cathedral. It's in the middle of nowhere, it's up a hill. You can see it for miles around. If you don't belong to a church congregation and you want anonymity and you want somewhere to just go and do those things, where do you go? You go to Guildford Cathedral. And many will find that they are listened to, supported and prayed with. Whatever storm they're facing, we're there for them. And the mention of storms reminds me of a classic blues song. It's a really cheesy link, but I'm going to do it because I love the song. T-Bone Walker's Stormy Monday. Call it Stormy Monday. Tuesday is just as bad. Call it Stormy Monday. Tuesday is just as bad. Wednesday's worse. Thursday's also sad. The eagle flies on Friday. Saturday I go out to play. Saturday I go out to play. Sunday morning I go to church. Yes, I get down on my knees and pray. Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy on me. Lord have mercy. Hopefully we'll knock some of the rust off these by the time we get to the end of the evening. So, where are we? We are at the fact that Guildford Cathedral is one of the smallest of the 42 English cathedrals. We operate, for a cathedral anyway, with a tiny staff. They're amazing. They're so committed. They're operating constantly under huge and increasing financial pressures, especially since the pandemic. Our strapline is open to God, open to all. And whilst I don't think that begins to say everything about us at all, it nevertheless speaks of gentle hospitality and welcome whoever you are. We try really hard for that to be our hallmark. And just as this church community is here for the whole parish, Wisley and Pyrford, the cathedral community, that's worshippers, staff, clergy, volunteers, all sorts of other stakeholders, exists for the county and for the diocese. That's a mighty big parish. It's a massive privilege and a huge challenge. But like a parish, it's not actually enough simply to be open. You know that here in Pyrford and Wisley, don't you? We actually need to be outward facing to develop and strengthen multiple relationships. So, in my role particularly, other clergy have different roles, but in my role I spend a certain amount of my time out and about. It's involved time in and around Guildford itself, of course, engaging with local businesses, politicians, charities, other church communities, and sometimes that engagement feels all too brief. But it is about taking the cathedral out into the community and not just expecting people to come up the hill to us. What is harder sometimes, because there is a whole diocese and a county to reach out to, what is harder sometimes is getting out beyond Guildford. So it's very good to be in Woking Deanery this evening, back in Woking Deanery. But yes, of course, using our site well is really crucial too. Inviting in is essential. So we host some pretty big occasions, county services marking royal and national events, services for charities like Age Concern, diocesan ordination services. We welcome the new Bishop of Dorking on Sunday evening, the major festivals of the Christian year, and the annual graduations for the University of Surrey and other academic institutions. One of the clergy is University Chaplain at Surrey as well, which strengthens our links and our partnerships there. We're also blessed with a small but extremely hard-working enterprise team who provides they provide a full calendar of external events. For example, Lunar Cinema. Yes, we showed Barbie outside on the hill in August. I'm sure you all wish you'd been there. I was on holiday. We showed all sorts of other things as well, and we do that every year. It's a really popular event. Lunar Cinema, concerts in the building, sound and light shows. Perhaps you've been to some of the illuminated shows in Guildford Cathedral. Fairs and sales, and when the opportunity arises, as it did in COVID particularly, but since as well, extending a welcome to major film companies producing shows for Netflix and the like. If you've seen Sandman and The Witcher on Netflix, then you may well have seen, unless you fell asleep, you may well have seen parts of Guildford Cathedral. We do have very little outside or grant support, so this type of activity that I've just been describing, along with fundraising by our small development team, is vital simply to keep the place open. They're not perhaps activities that you would associate with a cathedral, but all the cathedrals do them. It can be quite exciting, of course, and for example, I'm going to get to welcome Rick Wakeman to an event next month. Ooh. Daily visitors to the site are another aspect, of course, of cathedral life. Just one aspect, but a hugely important aspect. But the scale of our challenge in Guildford, being Guildford Cathedral particularly, is illustrated by this fact. Westminster Abbey averages as many visitors in a single day as we do in 3 months. It's a real struggle, and they charge £28 a time to get in, whereas we quietly suggest a swipe your card donation of £5. So, it might be a cathedral, but it's a certain type of cathedral. It's wonderful, but it's also quite small, and it faces huge challenges. There are other staples on our events programmes, most of which are free: our monthly free coffee concerts, our welcomes to pilgrims and sponsored cyclists, guided tours, including the wonderful Tower tours, the enabling of sponsored abseils from the Tower, and so much more. And then there are the one-offs. I do hope some of you came to see the spectacular Knife Angel in March. 1 or 2 nods. the National Monument Against Knife Crime and Aggression. Fantastic. It brought thousands of people onto the site briefly in that spell in March, and it saw the cathedral working in partnership with multiple other agencies, and it drew attention to a range of issues to do with violence, abuse and other connected issues. The testimonies of the parents of the knife crime victims, including the father of Stephen Lawrence, will live long in the memories of people of Surrey who came to that event. We also continue to seek to be what has traditionally been known as the Mother Church to the diocese. We're situated very centrally within the diocese, and until the nightmare of the Wisley roadworks, we have been very accessible from the road. We use the diocesan prayer calendar to pray every day for a different parish in the diocese. I love praying for West Byfleet when that comes up, and for all the other parishes in Working Deanery, because I can picture you all. The Diocesan Mothers Union hold monthly prayer meetings in the cathedral and annual services on site. Between us, the clergy try to attend every installation service of a new vicar and to extend a warm welcome from the cathedral community. I and others regularly conduct worship and preach at parishes without a vicar. We host the Maundy Thursday celebration of ministry each year. Historically, we've welcomed diocesan youth pilgrimages before my time, but I believe it began when a certain N. Aitken was diocesan youth officer, so you'll know all about that. For 2 years prior to the pandemic, we hosted the diocesan Thy Kingdom Come celebrations in the run-up to Pentecost, when a certain J. Welby dropped in on the first one. We have 3 mission partner agencies whom we support financially in prayer. So we are trying to be Mother Church, but the whole notion of Mother Church, in inverted commas if you like, it's not an afterthought, but I don't think it's actually aged well conceptually in a changing world, and that's as much as to do with the changes in parishes, I think, as well as it is in changes in Stag Hill. It seems like an alien concept, particularly when you're focused so much on your local community. But I don't think we're the only cathedral and diocese where this relationship needs strengthening, especially in the aftermath of the pandemic. But we at the cathedral do know we have work to do in building and rebuilding relationships with the parishes, and we want to do that. It's high on our agenda, not least as we're beginning to now draw up the first round of documents for the appointment of a new dean following the recent retirement of the wonderful Dean Diana. I'll come back to some of this and a bit more after another song, because I could do with a break from spouting about work to you all. And most of you are still with me, but 1 or 2 I'm beginning to wonder, so that's quite understandable. So this song is by Gretchen Peters. I'd never even heard of Gretchen Peters until 6-9 months ago, which shows my ignorance. And a dear friend said, you have to listen to this song, and it bowled me over. So this is about 10% as good as her version, but I hope you like it. It's called Say Grace. It also stretches the upper voice range almost too much, but let's see how we go. Our Lady of the Bus Depot is holding forth tonight. Her body, it is wasted, but her eyes are shining bright. Our Father, who art slightly drunk, is warding off the shakes, and he staggers underneath the weight of the promises he makes. Say grace, say grace, forgive yourself for all of your mistakes. You can start all over if that's what it takes. Come inside and set yourself ablaze and say grace. We are gathered here together to praise his holy name in a shelter by the Greyhound station down on 5th and Main. And as to who we're praying to, there are 2 schools of thought: a benevolent provider or an unforgiving God. say grace. Bible on the table is saying be of good cheer, but the TV in the corner screaming you're not welcome here, and the poster in the waiting room greets the tired and poor. Our Lady of the Harbour stands behind the golden door. Say grace. Say grace. Why don't you forgive yourself for all of your mistakes? You are not a loser. You are not a hopeless case. Come inside and find yourself a place and say grace. Come inside and find yourself a place, whoever you are, and say grace. So where are we now at Guildford Cathedral? I mentioned earlier that Diana retired a couple of weeks ago. Our sub-dean, former Archdeacon Stuart Beak, is now our acting dean as we wait for a new one to come along. And he, the acting dean, spoke last Sunday of our 4 priorities at this time. You can listen to what he said, or you can read the transcript, so word for word, via our website. I'm just going to very briefly summarise some of the things he said for us now. Our first priority in all of the areas of life that I've been describing, including relationships with the parishes, our first priority is pastoral care in the most general terms. It begins by recognising that COVID has done far more damage to our ways of relating to and trusting one another than we fully appreciate. It may well be that on an evening like this, perhaps a lot of old friends get together and slip straight back into how things were before. But if the personnel changes, how we approach one another is somehow, imperceptibly, but very really different. Some of life has the appearance of going back to normal, doesn't it? And yet, somehow, still, at least at the moment, nothing is quite the same. And actually, we've lost too many people for things to be quite the same. So at the cathedral, in parishes and between cathedral and parishes, we want to encourage everybody to be kind to each other, to put ourselves in each other's shoes, not the easiest thing to do, to see Christ in one another and all whom we meet as we seek to rebuild, consolidate and reach out. That's priority number 1. Our second priority is communication. Now, obviously, communication in this flagship parish is obviously perfect, right? Obviously, but we do actually recognise it's a weakness at the cathedral, certainly with our internal communications. And sometimes actually in terms of our getting our message out there as well. If you want to know something about the cathedral and we're not telling you, for goodness sake, come and ask. If necessary, email me personally and I'll sort it out for you. Being here this evening is part of trying to do something about how we communicate within the cathedral and beyond the cathedral. The third priority is our proposed land sale. I can explain more later if you'd like me to, if you've got a spare 4 hours. But as some of you will know, the idea has been around at least for a generation. Specific planning applications have twice been refused by Guildford Borough Council, the most recent of which was just 7 months ago, and in respect of which we can now say publicly our current development partner, Vivid Homes, has just launched a formal appeal. And we expect the appeal to be heard by the Planning Inspectorate next year. The race is on. Do we get a planning decision or a new dean first? We shall see. If the appeal succeeds, and you only launch an appeal, obviously, if you think you've got at least a reasonable chance of winning, It will lead at last to the establishment of a new community on Stag Hill, including social housing, so important as the Borough Council misses its own targets every single year in Guildford at the moment. Some of us were talking about not having enough housing over the meal, weren't we, Bob and Fred? It will also generate, this appeal, if it's successful, capital to provide an endowment to repair our crumbling plant. It's a 1960s building. I don't think there's any rack concrete in it, but there is a lot of concrete in it, and it's of a certain age and it needs some work. It will also see the much needed return of associated planning fees into our depleted reserves. And our fourth priority linked to the land sale is just ongoing finances. Like so many parishes, and certainly like other cathedrals, our ordinary running costs have been rising steadily. On account of COVID, our income streams have been falling. In 2019, before COVID, we were hitting break even, admittedly after an awful lot of hard work to make that happen. It's now in the public domain because Acting Dean Stewart said it, and it's on video and on the website and everywhere else, that our forecast deficit for this present year exceeds £100,000, which is clearly not sustainable. My fellow chapter members, that's trustees and I, together with the cathedral's phenomenal staff, they really are amazing, are doing what we can to address the issues, but it's a very serious and difficult situation requiring certainly practical action, but also much prayer and sustained faith. And we would value any support the Lord sends our way, frankly. It's not actually why I came here this evening, but I'm going to tell you that anyway, as I happen to be here. For example, do you have the skills, experience and vision to become a chapter member or a director of our enterprise board? Or are you personally and generously able to support us financially? Most of all, even if none of those things is you, will you pray in faith not just for the survival, but for the long-term thriving of your cathedral, of our cathedral? As you will have gathered, the cathedral is a complex, medium-sized organisation about which perhaps comparatively little is known, about which I'm increasingly enthusiastic. I just love being there. So I hope you may have found this interesting and stimulating as I've tried to share a little bit of that with you this evening. It is your cathedral, it is our cathedral, and it's very, very precious to so many of us. I do want to leave some space for questions, and I'm happy to see that I rattled through this a little bit more quickly than I thought. So if there's time for another song right at the end after some questions, we can do that too. But I'm going to stop now at this point simply with a list of things that I might have mentioned but didn't. How a new dean will be appointed, what the process is. How you can get involved in other ways as volunteers or in all sorts of other roles at the cathedral. Conditions, climate, atmosphere on Stag Hill involving high winds, the local deer population and parking restrictions. Some occasional funny moments. We've got a little list here if we need them. The wonderful all-day breakfasts at Seasons Cafe. My continuing surreptitiously sneaking out in and out of Pyrford that most of you probably wouldn't know about. Any or all of which, or anything else that you might like to raise or ask, could form the basis of any questions or thoughts or encouragements, anything at all that you gentlemen would like to say, to share with me or with each other. I'd be really grateful to hear from you. And then perhaps if we've had a little brief chat, I'll play you one last song. Over to you. I don't know whether there needs to be a roaming microphone or not. Here it comes. Look at that. Look at that. Oh, it's down by me, is it? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, there it is. Charles had it all along.
Okay. Thank you. Lovely talk and lovely music as well. Could you, Peter is my name, could you just tell us briefly what the relationship is with the church commissioners? I'm a total layman in this, but do they give you any support, and you and all the other 40-odd cathedrals around the country, that relationship?
Yes, I can illustrate the general relationship between the cathedrals and church commissioners by telling you what they do for us. I think one or two others have some extra strings attached, the Royal Peculiars, for example, like Westminster Abbey, but the kind of run-of-the-mill cathedral, I don't mean that in a derogatory way, I mean your ordinary cathedral, has a grant from the church commissioners to pay for one dean and 2 residentiary canons, which some people think of as the Dean's Curates, basically the full-time paid clergy of the cathedral, and to house them. So it's a bit like having 3 vicars. And there are occasional small bits of money around the place for, you apply for grants for particular one-off short-term projects and things, but the ongoing support is 3 clergy posts, that's it. That's right, that's fine.
Could you tell us something about the choir, please?
Could I tell you something about the choir? I repeat that for the sake of people here. Our choir is led by the extraordinary Catherine Deanish-Williams, the first woman director of music in the country. She has a slight favouring of modern choral music. When she directs the classics, it's phenomenal. She's a fantastic choral tutor and vocal trainer. We have a relationship with a particular school that supplies boy choristers. It's a little bit more open with the girl choristers who come from further afield, and we employ, I think I'm right in saying, I don't know whether Graham can help me out here, is it 6 or 8 lay clerks, which is professional adult singers, and we bring in others for special occasions. They sing every day except Wednesday. It's even song usually during the week. They sometimes sing at a midweek Eucharist if there's a Saint's Day or something like that. Even song will either be supplemented with or replaced by a choral Eucharist. The little black dotty things on the page confuse me. I gave up at grade 1 when I was 8 years old, but I'm told I have quite a good ear, and I can hear the difference between our choir and the choir that I heard when I went to see a friend installed at St Paul's Cathedral. Ours were a country mile ahead. I think the standard of our choir is just incredible, and that's down to Catherine. She has a support from an assistant organist and an organ scholar. We receive some music, some funding from our own Music Development Trust in the Cathedral, which we're very grateful, and also occasionally funding from the Cathedral Music Trust. There's a supporter chorister scheme, and we're about to launch a new scheme at Advent for more broader music patronage. I have no idea whether that was the kind of area about choir life over there, that you were looking for. If there's anything else you want to ask, please take your chance now, because we might move away from the choir afterwards. I didn't expect to be a choral enthusiast. I thought I'd leave that to the canon liturgists and I'd go off and do all the rest of the stuff. And actually they've just drawn me in because it's magnificent.
Thank you.
Is that all right? Okay. What else? Down here. Well, if you say it, I'll repeat it.
How do you as clergy look after each other? So I'm the Navy, we have a group of officers who walk together. And sometimes you meet people you don't like, sometimes you get on with, but that's how, by being together, is how we support each other as people.
Yeah.
If you're a priest here, if you're working in a parish, or if you're...
Well, some people would say priest, some would say minister, same thing. Yeah.
How do you do the kind of pastoral care of your own?
Right. So how do the clergy care for one another, I guess is the short way, and an example was given from the Navy of officers together. In some cathedrals, there is a history of clergy not getting on with each other. There have been spells in the life of Guildford Cathedral where I understand that has been the case. Ever since I've been here, it's not to do with my arrival, it's to do with what I arrived into. It's been a delight. We keep in touch regularly through little things like a WhatsApp group and regular coffee on Tuesday mornings, but we also, obviously, we worship together and we pray together. There are individual friendships that are particularly strong within the group, but the group as a whole is quite cohesive, really. All of us are responsible, I think, for, as a parish vicar and other clergy in the parishes would be, for looking after ourselves to some extent. So I have a spiritual director. That's the title that person uses. Other people might use soul friend or pilgrimage companion, but somebody who you can be held accountable by before God for your own faith and your own responses to life and the situations you come to. So I drive about 25 minutes within the diocese to another priest who is authorised by the bishop to do these sorts of things, and she hears everything because that's what she's there for. We're supposed to go on annual retreats and stuff like that, which I do. I go to the wonderful Thésée community in France. I mean, for 10, 12 years I went to Spring Harvest and bounced around with everybody else, and then I thought, I'm getting a bit old for this. And I was watching everybody else bounce around and I didn't have the energy. And a friend said, you need something different, come to Tezo. And I went, and it completely changed what I thought of God and how I prayed. 10 minutes silence in every single service, songs sung in multiple different languages, and a monastery set in the middle of the most beautiful countryside. So once a year, almost always around at the beginning of Advent, I go away for a week to France, which I'm going to be doing, in fact, the last week of November this year. I personally also meet up with some of my theological college contemporaries in a little cell group. On Monday I go to Oxford for 48 hours and we'll just laugh a lot, and that's so healthy. We also cry when somebody's going through a tragedy at different times over the last 25 plus years since theological college. Every single one of us has been through a major storm of one sort or another, and we're there for each other. But in the cathedral, as I say, it's just, we know that's what we're there to do for each other. We work as a team. And it's going to be different under acting Dean Stewart from how it was under Dean Diana. He's a different personality, but we know him already and we love him and we trust him. So it feels really good, actually. Really good. Do you want to come back on any of that? No? Okay. Thank you. Great question. Yeah, right at the back.
Chris, do you still have cathedral links out to the different parishes? And
Right.
how does that work? Is it successful?
I'm asked if we still have cathedral links out to the different parishes and how that works. I'm told that they did prior to COVID. I don't believe there is any kind of functioning scheme at the moment in terms of it being managed from within the cathedral. I suspect that as we go forward in the next 2 years or so, that will land on my plate to reactivate it. However, I could tell you, for example, who the links are next door in West Byfleet, who consider themselves still to be the cathedral links, even if the cathedral hasn't done much for them. And every time there's a children's event in the cathedral, Ian and Margaret Brown rock up and they help as volunteers. They're lovely people, they're amazing. So there's a lot of goodwill, I think, out there, but it's just trying to harness it in ways that are appropriate for now. And I'm not the newest member of clergy now, but I am still a relative newbie, and there seems to be, if I could just show a little bit of anxiety here, there seems to be so much to do and so much geography to get to grips with and to navigate that it's kind of one thing at a time, really. What we're trying to do first, before we re-establish that, is to re-establish a day chaplaincy scheme, whereby if you come up to the cathedral during the day and you want somebody to listen to you and to pray with you, there's somebody, perhaps a pastoral assistant, or a licensed lay minister, or a retired priest, or an ordinand, or possibly a second-year curate, or something like that, on hand to do that. And I've literally just been given that task by the acting dean to kick that off. So that one will come first. And dare I say, with my tongue in my cheek, being very naughty, if there are parishes that have a lot of ministers, thinking of nowhere in particular, if they happened to volunteer one suitable minister to join that scheme, I'd be very glad to hear from them. Church of the Good Shepherd.
What do you look at me for?
Oh, Charles, if you came up there, you and I'd just take off to the cafe. Nobody get anything done at all. Okay. Yes, sir.
You mentioned 3 or 4 objectives earlier on. I'm not quite sure. What's the objective in terms of rebuilding the numbers of church attendees? And I think this church and probably elsewhere, the numbers
Yeah.
tend to go down rather than up.
I was unhelpful in that I wasn't very specific about the context. The context of the acting dean's remarks was for an internal audience, and it was specifically about the duration, which we don't know how long it's going to be, of his time as acting dean. So it's what he has asked us to focus on now to get ready for the acting dean. There is absolutely an ongoing challenge to reach out and grow the congregation. I don't think we're going to be running snazzy courses like Leading Your Church into Growth, for example, because we're not a parish. The cathedral community is structured very differently. But there are things that we can do. What we're finding, praise God, is that new people are just turning up every Sunday. Our challenge is to harness that. So some need preparation for baptism and confirmation, some need a Bible study, some need some sort of discipleship course. And as a group of clergy, that's actually it's been on our agenda on and off, but it's actually on our agenda for next Tuesday morning. We've got to do something, but it is quite tricky when people only come perhaps every 3 or 4 weeks, and some of them will drive 45 minutes to come in on a Sunday, but are therefore not, because they want cathedral worship, but they're not available on a Wednesday. So we're also considering things like online. There has to be something about allowing God to be God in that space every day, 24/7, as well as in the services, and then allowing the Spirit to lead us rather than us working desperately hard to kind of hook people in. At the cathedral, we tend to get a lot of people who fall out of parishes, actually. People have been hurt in parish situations who just need to come and be anonymous for a while and sit with Jesus and Jesus' people, and then eventually identify themselves and come forward. And we've got a few of those as well. But that's not a great answer, is it? We know we have work to do. You're going to come back at me.
I was actually really thinking of to what extent can the cathedral support the parishes?
Oh, I beg your pardon. I completely missed your... Ah, yeah.
It's a great question.
Yeah, well, I've just illustrated quite inadvertently without realising that we've got the same problems. Well, I mean, we will come out and do stuff. Ask the cathedral clergy to come out and do stuff. And quiet days. The diocesan mission enabling team are the people to come and help you with church growth per se, tying you into the bishop's objectives for the diocese. But we're always happy to support all of those things, of course. Some of us might speak in some slightly different terms from some of the mission enablers, which might be a good thing or might not be. What's sometimes good is a double-headed day, isn't it, where two very different Christian ministers work together and there's a bit more of a sense of something for everyone. One area we are strong on is church schools coming into the cathedral and actually building up the ministry of church schools in the parishes. And we work very closely with Alex Tier and the diocesan education team to actually host various events, either under the cathedral's banner or under the diocesan banner. And we're finding that that's beginning to ripple out and make a difference. A lot of clergy come in with their schools. And you learn about the parish because you look at how the minister is dressed. That tells you all you need to know. I mean, look at me, I'm hardly papal tonight, am I? Praise the Lord. But actually, when you get the minister with the long hair and the pair of jeans, and then the minister with a black suit, that tells you to a certain extent. But they all want the same thing, and it's the same Jesus, one church, one faith, one Lord. So we're doing our bit. I don't think we have a leadership role within the diocese to build up the congregations. I think the bishop would get a bit annoyed and say that's what his mission enablers are there for. But we absolutely want to do everything we can to help. And if there's something you think we can do here, then ask us. Any more for any more? Time is getting by and I'm wondering... Oh, sorry, did you point? Oh, I'm so sorry. Out the corner of my eye.
You mentioned links the cathedral has with the film industry.
Yes.
One of the main, very powerful imagery the cathedral has is the film appears in the 70s called The Exorcist, together with Pyrford corpus and everything. And there's some very strong imagery which people of the faith some may have objected to, some may have gone along with. I just wondered how the cathedral lives with that, because
it was a decision taken by a previous generation of cathedral chapter and clergy, which absolutely has left us with that legacy. I'm going to enjoy this one. I was at primary school when it happened. Sorry, that was really unfair. So I haven't gone out of my way to find out about it. What I do know is that there is a theological filter on everything that we do. We have one or two people on our staff, including the university chaplain, who are avid readers of sci-fi and cosmic storytelling. I mean, I'd rather read Jane Austen because I'm old, but Duncan is into all this stuff. And he read both the novels and then the scripts of the films before we agreed to let the filming take place. So there is that filter now. In terms of living with the legacy of The Exorcist, I mean, people still talk about it. Yeah, absolutely. But I hope that if you drive up the drive to the cathedral now, you would find a place of warmth and of light rather than anything that you might associate with the slightly disturbing images from that film. It's interesting, it reflects changes in society, I think. In my first parish, it was a Victorian church building, and we had the kind of typical Victorian churchyard. And I'd done a lot of work with the local high school for boys. partly because very tragically one of their number was killed on the road cycling to work experience. And so they started to come down more and more. And then they got a new English teacher one day, and she sent me an email saying, "We want to study Victorian horror. Can we come down to your churchyard?" I said, "Pardon? Can I speak to you about this?" So I phoned her up, and she said exactly the same thing. So I had to go to the head teacher and say, "Your English staff think that churchyards are a place of horror, and we actually think there's a place of peace and of resurrection and of healing and of, yes, of tears, all the things that you might expect it to be." So I do think that if you like, part of the expectation is because people took a decision to do it, but partly also it's the way that other people from outside of the church look in on this, and these things are quite difficult to separate out sometimes. I never expected to be asked about that here. That's a brilliant question. But like I said, it weren't me, Gov, I was a kid.
I suspect it brings some fun.
Fewer and fewer, I am told, by our events people, but when people were trying to second guess, because it's all confidential when it's being filmed, of course, Warner Brothers and Netflix are on site, you're not allowed to say. We all had to sign NDAs to... I mean, I'd never even heard what it was they were filming, because I don't read that stuff, but I had to sign an NDA, and people were speculating in the local press and on local neighbourhood websites as to what it was. And when it eventually got out, and people therefore knew who the lead actors were, we had people flocking up trying to get onto the site to get the sight of the actors. We just denied everything because we had to, and they didn't get to the actors. But I think if you like, the debate is still there, but the personnel and the films have changed. It's a generation on. So. Okay. You probably do have homes to go to. Some of you may have wives who are cross that you went to a men's event and they weren't allowed in. I don't know. I've been hearing a bit about that around the edges this evening. I'm really grateful to have been here. Thank you very much for your warm welcome. Thank you for listening to me drone on about a place that I've come to love very much. The last song then, which I will do because it's a very short one, is, I think, quite joyous. It's called I'm Thankful. And the first lines are I'm thankful, I'm grateful. What was it called? I'm grateful. I can't remember. But it's by the wonderful Bryn Howarth, Christian singer-songwriter of many years. And musically, it's just where I am anyway. So this will close your evening. I'm thankful, I'm grateful for every day I have to live. I don't want to take for granted the many ways you give. Oh, when I wake up in the morning with my baby by my side, I can't help thinking to myself, yeah, it's good to be alive. Oh, when I look out of the window, the weather's cold and skies are grey. Well, now something in my heart says, you know what, it's a sunny day. Oh, well, my body gets so tired of living with these aches and pains, but I've got myself a deal where this one will be exchanged. Well, I'm thankful, I'm grateful, I've only got one life to live. Oh, when I die I'm going to heaven and I won't be back again. Well, don't you know, I guess things always could be better. But then again, they could be worse. Meanwhile, I got myself the greatest love in all the universe. It's my intention to be thankful Even though I'm old and grey, I want to leave this world of trouble with a smile upon my face. Oh, na na, yeah, yeah. I want to leave this world of trouble with a smile upon my face. That's your lot.
Thanks very much, Chris.